Welcome everybody to Center Stage. I'm Rajiv, your host, and today I have Justin Bean from Hitachi, Global Director of Smart Spaces and Video Intelligence. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Hitachi, for those of you who don't know, has been around for over 100 years, founded in 1910, a long time ago, and Hitachi has an incredibly wide range of products, ranging from aircrafts to components, and devices to construction machinery to defense systems to digital media, consumer products, and equipment. The list goes on and on. Very, very impressive with an incredible history. Today, we're here to talk about smart spaces and what that means in smart cities. But before we start there, so again, Hitachi has been around for over 100 years, and the mission, which I read, was to contribute to society through the development of superior original technology and products. Seems pretty forward-thinking and in tune with modern values. So Justin, tell us, how do you think that has and is helping Hitachi today?
Sure. Well, Hitachi, like you said, is over 100 years old. We like to think of ourselves as one of the oldest tech companies that's out there. And from a company that does everything from bullet trains to renewable energy to artificial intelligence and data-driven solutions, there's a lot in that toolbox to pull from to help contribute to society. So that philosophy of social innovation is really helpful for the company in a variety of ways. So one is with recruiting, right? So you've got a whole generation of people who are really interested in contributing their work to improving society, making our economies and technologies more sustainable, and really doing something meaningful with their lives. So people are really excited, including myself, to work for a company that has those types of values. Another one that is pretty obvious is the impact you can make with that. Right. Being able to pull together these types of solutions that really create more sustainable cities and smarter spaces, better business, better experiences for people. So it helps the company in recruiting new people, in creating impact, but also there's a big business opportunity there. So if we can focus the dynamism and potential of business and capitalism on solving real human challenges, there's nothing we can't do, right? How do we get closer to Star Trek in a pragmatic way?
The next frontier.
Yeah,
Right. So smart spaces. Tell us what is a smart space, and how is Hitachi helping to create them?
Yeah. So smart spaces are this idea of, you've got all these different places around your city. You've got shopping malls and train stations and airports and public spaces, and all of them have some type of operational aspect. They all have an experience that you experience as a customer or as a passenger or a citizen. And how can we improve those experiences? So we want to make them safer. We want to make sure that they're efficient. And we want to make sure that people have a great experience. So you must start with the experience or start with the outcome that you're trying to reach, and then back into what the technologies and solutions are that provide that. And so Hitachi applies the technologies within its toolbox to help to improve those public spaces in whatever way, to improve safety, improve operations, and improve the experience of people. Got
it. And so when I was reading about smart spaces, it sounds like Hitachi is combining video, IoT, Internet of Things, analytics, and artificial intelligence.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that sort of tool set and how you're leveraging that to improve the quality of life.
Yeah, it all starts with making smarter decisions and more data-driven decisions.
Okay.
Right, and so there is a new opportunity for anyone who's managing or operating those spaces to make those smarter decisions, because we now have the data that tells us what's happening, right? We've seen this already happen in the digital world. Anyone who has an e-commerce shop or online store has either gotten really good at using analytics to A/B test and multivariate test their websites, improve conversions and understand what the flow of people is on their website, how long they spend on a page, what they click on, etc., to improve their site. Or they're not in business anymore, right? So they've gotten really good at using data to improve their business and serve their customers better. So what's happening is that those same types of insights are coming to the physical world. So how can we take those same approaches to improving how long you spend waiting for a train if the platform's getting crowded, or if an event is going on, how we respond to disasters and weather events, things like that. and also how we serve customers better in retail environments.
Okay.
Now, the technology is a big part of it, right? Because there's now data coming from all these different devices and products that are out there. How can we pull that data in to inform the analytics and KPIs that we use to make smarter decisions? Now, video is a big part of that because of artificial intelligence.
Okay.
Computer vision and machine learning is now able to look at video and transform it into all these insights about the composition of traffic, how many people are using the bike lanes at different types of day, which roads are more used by cars, trucks, buses, etc., and how is that impacting the traffic? What are the policies doing? If you change a policy, what's the impact of that? All kinds of things that this artificial intelligence can do to understand what's happening based on video.
Got it.
Now, video is, I think, one of the most underutilized sources of data that's out there because it's already basically ubiquitous. Right? It's throughout airports and facilities everywhere, but it's not being used to its full potential in most places. So putting things like video analytics on top of that data can tell us how many people walked past my store versus how many entered. What products are people interacting with? What do they like? What do they not like? What do they buy? What do they not buy? And so we can get all these rich insights about the world around us based on data that's already there, just making that data smarter. And that's through artificial intelligence and the ability to pull together all these different types of data into analytics that tell us what we need to do to make those smarter decisions.
Got it. So as you mentioned, Hitachi has a corporate mission of social innovation. How are smart spaces delivering on that mission?
Yeah, it's a lot of what we talked about, right? So helping to make these spaces smarter, saving lives. We have customers who are using these types of data-driven insights to predict weather events like typhoons in India, for example, and tell people 30 minutes ahead of time that that's coming so they can get somewhere safe. That they can better operate their infrastructure, respond to crimes or disasters, like I said, but also serve people better. So one great example is the state of Andhra Pradesh in India. This is a state of 50 million people that touches lives across many cities and across the state. So they've integrated data from 30 different government departments, providing over 750 services to the people.
Wow.
Now, they're taking that data-driven approach to managing agriculture. How do they help the farmers to grow what needs to be grown so that they have the right mix of crops in that state? And they're not going to have a glut of one thing, which is going to give those farmers lower prices, or a shortage of another, which is going to upset the market and people won't be able to get what they need. To ration distribution, right? So they're distributing rice and food out to families who are impoverished and need it. But sometimes that food can be stolen en route and then sold in a local market. So what they're doing is they're able to verify where the food was sent from and verify that the person received it. So they're making sure that the families that need that food are getting it and that their social programs are effective. So there's so many different examples of ways that we can help to manage these things by taking a data-driven approach. Otherwise, you're essentially flying blind. And so applying that technology to these types of programs that improve life for people is really how this is making an impact in social innovation and making the world a better place through technology and through business.
It's interesting because, for decades, this is how it was operated in Uttar Pradesh, right? They were flying blind, essentially. Yet it was working to a certain degree, but now adding this layer of data and analytics, you really be making it much more efficient and making sure that things don't go off the rails.
Yeah, and Andhra Pradesh isn't alone. I mean, most of the world, whether it's government or business, has been flying blind or with a small amount of resolution about what's happening in the world. Right. They've got some insights. They've got gut checks. People have experience, but they don't have the layer of data to tell them what's going on. I think Dallas is a great example of this. So Dallas wanted to look at their homeless challenges, right? And they wanted to see what they were spending on homelessness. So they combined data from hospitals, from the police to see, they're getting hospitalized, they're getting arrested, thrown in jail, things like that. And they realized it was costing them $46,000 per year per person to not do much directly about homelessness. And so that was a big wake-up call for that city to say, hey, we're already spending a lot of money to not address this problem. Let's do something about it. So what they did is they created a housing first program where people had a place to live. They had on-site drug treatment and job training and counseling and all of these things that can help people get back on their feet. And they're now spending $16,000 per year per person to do something about the problem.
Wow.
So it's a story that we can all get behind, right? So having the data tells you what it's costing you to do what you're doing, how you can improve what you're doing, and then in that case, even saving money by doing something about the problem in the short term.
Yeah.
And in the longer term, they're going to be a more equitable and more prosperous city and society because they've addressed this problem and helped these people to reach their potential.
Sounds like a playbook we could leverage in San Francisco.
Yeah, in many cities across the U.S., right?
Right.
Homelessness is a big challenge for a lot of people in our country and abroad as well.
Right.
And if we can take these data-driven approaches to get beyond the rhetoric and the pull yourself up by your bootstraps type approaches to the problem and say what really works.
Right.
Let's put all of the ideologies aside.
Right.
What is actually happening?
Yes.
Why is it happening? And what works to improve that? Let's do that together and find the funding that we need to approach that problem in the right way.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you and your role. What does a typical day look like for you as the global director of Smart Spaces Marketing?
Well, I wear a lot of hats.
Okay.
Right. So from a marketing perspective, that can be looking at messaging and how do we talk about these types of solutions. It could be working with partners to figure out how this solution fits into their marketing mix and their product mix, also working with our product management teams on the future-facing strategy for the products. Where is this going? Where is the world going? What do the customers need? What are the customers saying? And how can we have impact? And what are the solutions that are going to deliver that impact? So working with those product teams to figure out what the future holds and how we can be more effective in making that future a better one.
Got it.
To building PowerPoints and day-to-day stuff of data sheets and all kinds of content that we're creating. So
I can tackle.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff, everything from the really tactical stuff to the strategic, and that's something that I really love is the variety and the fact that it's all focused on impacting people's lives and impacting the world in a positive way.
Okay. So let's talk about a smart city. What is a smart city, and how will living in a smart city be different for the people who are in that city and the impact it will have on the economy?
Yeah. So we talked about this a little earlier today, right? I mean, if you ask 100 people what a smart city is, you're probably going to get 300 different answers, right? Because it means a different thing to different people.
Sure.
Yeah. And everyone wants something specifically different, but in general, smart cities will be a place that will be safe. You won't worry about walking down the street because you're focused on your experience in the city. What's the event that you're going to, are you catching a train or taking a Lyft or Uber, those types of things. So it would be safe first and foremost.
Okay.
Second of all, your tax dollars are going to be used more efficiently, and the services that you get should be more effective. So again, just like that Dallas example, you're going to get better service and it should be less expensive, or those programs that are going to be more effective will be more prioritized because of what the data shows and what people need, because that's a big part of it is understanding what people need in the city so that they can better serve them. And they should be better experiences, right? These should be thriving places where you've got a lot going on. There's fun events to go to. You can hang out with your friends and have a barbecue in the park or, do whatever it is you like to do because it's this thriving, interesting place to live and it's based on the people who live there. I think often with the smart city conversation and a lot of technology, we focus a lot on the technology itself as opposed to the experience that technology can help people have.
For the outcome.
Or the outcome. Yeah, what's the impact and what's the outcome you're trying to create? And then backing into the solution that provides that, backing into the technology that you need to architect to provide the solution that provides the outcome. Not starting with, here's a widget that we have. Here's 20 reasons why this should be the best thing ever, but I haven't really thought about the person that's impacted.
Right. So you mentioned artificial intelligence just a little bit ago. AI has been in the headlines quite a bit. In your opinion, sort of what's hype versus reality when it comes to AI?
Yeah, it's a hard one to tell, right? Because this is such a competitive industry where it's nascent and people are creating these new things. I heard this joke recently, which I think highlights what's going on today, which is, if it's machine learning, it's probably coded on Python. If it's artificial intelligence or AI, it's probably coded up on PowerPoint. And so I think that kind of underscores a lot of the hype that's going on, right? I mean, we've got all of these really long-term and important conversations that we're having about artificial intelligence turning into the Terminator and taking over the world and all these other things.
Right.
And I think that's the easy path. It's really easy to think about the dystopian outcomes, and we should think about those and prevent those from happening. But really, it's harder to think about the utopian outcomes and the positive outcomes that you can create by leveraging the technology. And again, there's a big business opportunity in doing that. So, there are several things that are happening that are very real. So in computer vision, for example, venture capital investments have basically increased 10x from 240 million to 2.5 billion between 2015 and 2018. So massive increase in the amount of investment and innovation. The accuracy is improving with things like image recognition. We surpassed human vision in 2015, right? So the accuracy is getting better. The artificial intelligence is more able to process the data. The other part is the data is exploding, right? When you look at video data, I mean, I think it's over 2 petabytes per day are being added on top of what's already there in terms of new video that's out there. So imagine what we can do with all of that data, and all of it is becoming more accurate. We can get all these great insights on traffic and flows of people and safety alerts and all of those types of things. So there's a lot of reality to it, but I think that a lot of the reality is being outshouted by some of the hype that's around. And so it's a tool like anything else. Right. So we, in the first industrial revolution, were able to decouple muscle from human beings and horses and animals to let the machines do the physical work and the hard labor. And that freed up a lot of people to do more work with their minds and more delicate work with their hands to create more precise things. And that spurred a massive economic boom. It also spurred a lot of changes, which we need to be very aware of and make sure that we're helping people along the way to make sure that people aren't left behind and that they have a part in that new economy that's being created, and they have a role to play and value to add, which everyone does. It's kind of a matter of the access that people can have to joining that economy. And so I think we're seeing something very similar today, where we've been able to decouple intelligence and thinking from the human brain and instead have a machine do a lot of that thinking. So I think there's going to be a similar economic impact where we have a massive proliferation of new use cases for artificial intelligence and ways that it can take especially mundane tasks off of our plates so that we can be freed up to do more artistic and creative and interesting work. But we have to be very aware of the social impact that creates and have a plan for how to bridge that so that people are included in not only the conversation but in that new economy, and we make sure that people have a role to play and that they have a part and a stake in that new economy. And one thing I'll add to that is, that last industrial revolution took decades. It took nearly a century, to really get somewhere. Now, we're going to have years, So it's much faster, and so we need to mitigate it that much faster.
And so on that note, there's been a lot of talk about sort of the ethical consideration when it comes to artificial intelligence. So what do you think, in your opinion, are some of the responsibilities that marketers have in terms of educating the public around sort of these ethical issues around AI?
Yeah, I think marketers have a big responsibility to paint the picture of the future, not only to frame up the products they have in a positive light, but to influence product roadmaps and influence the direction that these things take. And painting those pictures that people can get behind, painting the visions that really inspire people to create that future. Because you don't get the future that you want by disliking one future more. You get the future that you want by envisioning it and creating it and doing the hard work that it takes to get there. And outworking those who are creating the dystopian future to create the positive utopian future.
Okay. Let's go back to smart cities and smart spaces. So what's the difference between a smart city and a smart space, and why is it important to market with this differentiation?
Yeah. Yeah, so they're very interrelated, right? So we've had this idea of smart cities over the years as a big government only project,
Hmm.
right? But cities are bigger than City Hall. Cities are these complex ecosystems
Sure.
of businesses and
Retail, universities, etc.
absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
airports.
Yeah, there's many other places where we spend our time besides City Hall.
Hmm.
And so we need to make sure that those places are smart so they can be effective and efficient, not wasting energy or resources, and they also are great experiences. So the smart spaces are kind of a subset of a smart city
Yep.
that helps all of those different stakeholders throughout the city be safer, more efficient, and more effective at what they do and providing a better experience. So it ends up being a very similar thing, but you can apply that same technology to a public space as you can to a retail store.
Yep.
And so that's what we're doing. And what we see is that a lot of those smart spaces are now starting to be ever more interconnected and able to start sharing data, or at least the metadata and some of the insights that are going on. And so you'll get an exponential return from the more data that comes in. It ends up being this 2 + 2 = 5 type outcome,
Right.
where the sum is greater than the
Individual parts.
yeah, exactly.
And you mentioned Dallas as an example. Are there other smart cities that you've been working on that sort of exemplify sort of this new future?
Yeah, and it's all in different ways. So you've got smaller cities like Moreno Valley, California, right? In Southern California, it's a couple 100,000 people, but they're implementing this smart city solution for public safety and also for traffic management,
Okay.
right? And then you've got states as large as Andhra Pradesh,
Right.
touching the lives of 50 million people with hundreds of different services. And you've got these different use cases. Another one is Tequila and Telehente in Mexico.
Okay.
And this is a great example. So they've gone from having about 100,000 visitors per year to a projected 1.4 million visitors next year
Wow.
in tourism. And this is fueling a lot of economic growth and a lot of attention to the city, and people love going there, right? Because they can see where tequila is made, they can go do tastings, and they have these great buses that are shaped like tequila bottles and all that. So really fun place to visit,
Yeah.
but that's a massive stress on a small town
Right.
in the hills of Mexico.
Sure.
And so they are figuring out how to better manage the crowds.
How to plan for that.
How to plan for it, exactly. Yeah, whether that's traffic or it's the pedestrian safety,
Sure.
or it's just where the crowds should flow through the city in order to not disturb the residents who are there, because you want it to be a positive experience for the residents who live there.
Sure. Not disruptive.
Yeah, and not
Right.
disruptive to those citizens, and not create an adversarial relationship between these visitors who are stimulating the economy and bringing all this business and really loving their trip to tequila,
Right.
but could be disturbing the locals if they're up late and flooding the
I
streets.
think we might need to take a trip.
Yeah, we might have to go and do some investigative journalism and
Yes,
see what it's all
absolutely,
about. Yeah.
absolutely. One last question regarding some of the businesses we're talking about. So regarding trends in technology, what do you see as some of the most significant changes in the economy over the next 5 or 10 years that excites you?
Yeah. What really excites me about the changes that are happening in technology and in the economy is really this influx of care for things like sustainability and what we're using business and our economy for,
Okay.
right? Because the economy is a subset of the ecology, right? We're operating within this larger structure that's incredibly complex. We don't fully understand, yet we're incredibly dependent on it.
Right.
And the younger millennial and Generation Z generations really understand that this is a very important time for us to get it right, and for us to funnel business and nonprofit and government on solving some of the challenges today that are going to prevent things like gigantic natural disasters and flooding of cities in the future. And those generations will be here to see it.
Right.
So they know they have a very strong personal interest in it, but also I think there's a lot more empathy for others and seeing the world as one smaller community that is interdependent on each other and dependent on this ecology within which we live and operate. So that really excites me to see us funneling our smarts and our technology and our work on solving those human and environmental challenges.
Right.
And so that's really inspiring to me. and also seeing that new things like blockchain combined with things like social media and these other things are creating these distributed operational models
Right.
where you can have things like distributed autonomous organizations
Mm-hmm.
that can be run by a network of people
Mm-hmm.
and in a more democratic sense.
Sure.
So there's more transparency into what's going on. There's more input from the people who are involved in that network on where it's going.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to solve for a lot of the challenges that are inherent in that.
Right.
But if we do, that can create a really beautiful future.
So, yes, so you mentioned, the sort of ecology and economy and how smart cities and smart spaces could potentially help with natural disasters. You mentioned typhoons and being prepared for it. And here we are in the middle of May, and there's snow in the Sierras, and I was living in Miami last year, and more hurricanes are happening, more flooding. There's natural disasters occurring, I feel like, all the time in the news. So help me understand how you're thinking about smart cities and smart spaces and sort of the data and technology helping with these eminent natural disasters that are occurring more frequently.
Yeah, and it's a great question, right? And I think it comes into several different buckets. One is the near term, right? Because there are going to be disasters. We need to be more resilient and help people in those disasters or predict them so that they can avoid them. So there are those predictive analytics that say, hey, a storm of this level is coming, push out notifications to people in the area so they can get somewhere safe and they know where safe is so they can get there. So there are ways of predicting and notifying people so that they can be safer.
Advance warning.
Yeah, basically advance warning, right? And then there's the medium to longer term. So what do? I mean, carbon emissions and greenhouse gases are increasing ever more rapidly in the atmosphere, but we know that because of data and because of measurements, right? Like NASA's working on it.
Sure.
Just talked to Harvard the other day, and they're doing this really interesting research project with LIDAR, where they're looking at the composition of the atmosphere with lasers.
Okay.
So all kinds of interesting ways that we're gathering data on what's happening, but that's just the first step. Right? The first step is understanding what's happening and why. And we know that the climate is changing.
Sure.
And we know that it's changing because of human activities and because of greenhouse gases. Now what do we do about it?
Right.
And that becomes a socio-political challenge, and we can also run data on that, right? So what are the political instruments and financial incentives for business and grants that we can provide and those types of things that will help to reduce those greenhouse gases and will help us to create more sustainable businesses and better management of natural resources and replenishment of natural resources to impact the longer term, to slow down that climate change and possibly reverse it.
Right.
I mean, China and India have planted, I think, 1 billion trees, right? That's huge. I just saw there's a great search engine that not only protects privacy, but with their profits, they invest that in planting trees. And social entrepreneurs, mostly women entrepreneurs in Africa and South Asia, are now getting paid to go out and plant those trees, and they're building their own entrepreneurial models around that. So these things are incredibly tightly woven together, where we need to solve the development and economic and equity challenges. And we can do that by solving some of the longer term ecological restoration challenges and prevent more climate change. So it's not going to happen overnight, but we can make a difference between a 3-foot sea level rise and a 20-foot sea level rise.
Right.
And those things are very, very different in terms of the civilizational survivability of that change.
And all right, we're going to shift gears. So this is sort of like quick answers. We're not talking about business. All right. Do you have a life mantra or philosophy you'd like to share?
I think one thing that I think about with this is being tenaciously connected to and determined to the general outcome while being Zen-like detached from the way you get there, right? And so I think what happens often is that we get so attached to the path that we take to get to a certain goal or outcome that we want to reach that we miss all these doors that are opening in front of us. We think the only way for me to make an impact in the world is for me to go to Harvard and become president.
Right.
There are 7 billion other ways that you can get there. And being aware of those doors that are opening and not so attached to what the specific path is, has been very helpful for me, and I think can be helpful for others as well.
Before we were on camera, Justin and I were talking. He spent 5 years in Japan teaching English, hence the, I guess, the Zen analogy there. What keeps you motivated? What is important to you about the work you do? How do you stay engaged in what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to zoom out and think about the big picture. You know, I love space documentaries and looking at things like the Fermi paradox. Why are there trillions of stars out there, but we haven't found any life, even though it seems that the conditions for life are
statistically,
very common in the universe.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and so civilizations may have gotten to a better point where we can't even detect them at this point, or they may just reach some barrier like we're about to reach, where they just collapse and their planet turns into Venus, where it's too hot for anything to live.
Hopefully we won't reach that point.
Yeah, hopefully we don't. Let's do everything we can to not make that happen.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that really inspires me, is looking at this is the only planet that we know of or have discovered that has intelligent, conscious life. And it's incredibly precious.
Right.
And every life on it is incredibly precious. If we found a mosquito on Mars, we would be amazed, right? That would be the most precious piece of life.
Right. We wouldn't want to swat it. We want to keep it alive for as long as possible.
Yeah, whereas I'm still swatting mosquitoes here on Earth. But I recognize that it's an incredibly precious place, and the work that we can do to keep it that way is really important, and that keeps me very motivated.
Do you have any rituals or daily habits that keeps you focused and productive?
I think meditation is a strong one. Just being able to take a pause and breathe deeply, and again, sort of zoom out of the weeds and think about the bigger picture really helps me. Yeah.
Awesome. Do you practice meditation daily?
I'd like to. Thanks for calling me out. It depends. It ebbs and flows. Yeah. So sometimes it's pretty often, and other times I get a little detached from it, and then it's going to the gym and exercising, or just having a good conversation with a friend. I think there are a million different ways you can get back to center, as 100%. Long as you're doing some of those.
Yep. Last question. What is the latest book that you read?
Let's see. So a book I read recently, which I really liked, was Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark.
Okay.
So this is all about artificial intelligence and creating the future that will make artificial intelligence a great help to humanity. Because it's not like the future is just happening to us. It's something that we're co-creating together.
Awesome.
And if we focus that on the positive, then we can get there.
Life 3.0. I'll have to check it out.
It's a great one.
Awesome.
Another good one, if you're interested, is The Zero Marginal Cost Society by Jeremy Rifkin. It's a little bit older, but it explores the convergence of a lot of these different technologies. So the Internet of Things and the sharing economy and 3D printing and artificial intelligence, but essentially looking at the fact that capitalism by nature makes things more efficient and makes things cheaper and more accessible. So with free energy coming in from renewables and the ability of machines to reproduce other machines and the ability for us to have data to better manage those things and the ability for us to manage the world in a distributed fashion, we see that things are becoming zero marginal cost, right? It costs money to build a solar panel, but to gather energy from it is pretty close to zero marginal cost. You have to clean it off every once in a while. Basically, that energy is free. Now imagine having a 3D printer sitting next to it that's powered by that solar panel that prints another solar panel. Continue that out to transportation and food and all kinds of products and services, and you get a zero marginal cost society that ends up, if you have the social structures and political structures and those things correct, can be very equitable, have plenty of abundance for everyone, and can help us get to a more sustainable, more interesting society to live in.
Definitely check it out. Love it. Justin, thank you so much for your time. Anything else you want to impart on us before we sign off?
I'd just say thanks for having me, and it's been a really interesting conversation. And thanks for the work that you're doing to spread these types of this type of information.
Absolutely,
and helping the good fight of keeping the world going and making it a more sustainable place.
Justin Bean, everybody, Global Director of Smart Spaces and Video Intelligence at Hitachi. I'm Rajiv. This is Center Stage. Thanks for watching.